Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei become a pure evil part 3. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video and also share this video with your friends. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. For a dragon's aura to change, it needs to either experience a dramatic change in his or her psyche, in other words, make the dragon change from the inside, or an extremely long period of time needs to pass. The first cases are IluLuga and Tiamat, and the second cases are me, Albion, Tannen, and the rest of the famous dragons that I know of. Once this change occurs to the dragon, its strength in all aspects will increase, and depending on its trait, his growth speed will be different from others. Stupefied by the sudden information Drake told him, Issei didn't have any words to say for a long while. Wow. So that's why dragons are that strong? No wonder they were called the strongest species. Issei had a little bit of pride filling him, he even made a small smirk on his face. But why are you telling me this? Issei asked the red dragon as he looked at the reverse of his palm shining in a green light. He expected an answer from the dragon. Because, partner. That evolution occurred to you just a day ago, Drake answered his question. Issei could swear he could see a mocking smirk on the dragon's face, even if he couldn't look directly at him, he just felt it. But before he continued his thoughts, he widened his eyes. He felt petrified, and stuttering he talked back, "Wait, are you saying?" He was interrupted by the laugh of a dragon. Drake laughed maniacally with all the effort he could muster. Correct. Congratulations, partner. Now you are a true dragon in the whole sense of the word. Now you can actually become the strongest Sekiryuite in history. Drake congratulated his partner because of the new improvement, but more than improvement, it was a change, an evolution. By the strength shown the other day when you released your aura, I can proudly say to you that it's not inferior to neither Albion's nor my own. Haha. Drake continued to maniacally laugh. The words of the dragon shocked Issei even further. Not inferior to his own, but Drake is a heavenly dragon. It's he saying that I have the potential to become a heavenly dragon because of my own power, without the boosted gear. Once again, partner, that's correct. With the correct training and time, you by your own strength can attain the heights of a heavenly dragon. If not more. Drake answered, magically reading his partner's mind again. Was he that easy to read? Issei was dumbfounded. He never thought that he, the weakest Sekiryuite in history, could reach, by his own strength without any external help, the potential to become a heavenly dragon. Haha. Now who's the miracle volley? Laughing and scoffing at his rival inside his head, Issei quickly felt in the best mood since the past couple of months. What can we do, Drake? Issei asked the experienced dragon. Right now we need to figure out what the traitor traits, in your case, can do. So sit down in a meditative pose and focus. Remember exactly what triggered your aura. Once you activate it, each successive time will be easier. Drake instructed Issei and did as told. He soon noticed how his partner turned pale, sweat was coming from his face, and soon after he started to tremble. By one way or another, the miasma that appeared that night appeared once again. It quickly filled the entire training field. Soon after, it started to compress itself onto Issei's body, forming another layer of skin. One black in color with a tinge of red, in a few places a violet light was shining at irregular intervals. This skin was covering only a small portion of his body, those being his left shoulder and right thigh. It gave the appearance of an ink stain that extended itself onto the body. The edges of the said ink stain had the shape of the roots of a tree, with different sizes and widths. Some were forming spirals, while others just extended themselves to their utmost length, reaching different parts of his body. Issei was concentrating. But by Drake's guesses, whatever activated his aura was definitely not pretty. His guess was the memories from that night, and by the looks of it, he hit the nail right in the head. Issei was trembling, he felt awful. He subconsciously knew what activated his aura, and it definitely wasn't good. What activated it was different from Drake's guesses, it was bad emotions. For his aura to manifest itself, he needed to experiment with bad emotions and not let them take control of himself, because if they did, then he didn't want to think about it. Seconds painfully went by. Drake, scared of interrupting his friend during this process, didn't dare to breathe, much less speak. Thankfully, a few seconds later, a mark appeared on his partner's face. The mark started at the left side of his forehead. It was in the shape of a spiral that circled itself 2 times, ending upwards and towards the left, almost reaching the roots of his hair. On the right side of the spiral, there were 3 spikes joined one amongst the other by their edges and pointing upwards in a diagonal way. On the bottom part of the spiral, on the same side it ended upwards, a long yet thin spike reached downwards, ending right above the eyebrow. After the mark fully formed, Issei opened his eyes. His former honey-colored eyes that irradiated naivety and foolishness were now gone. Instead, they were replaced by black eyes that had a tinge of red. These eyes irradiated sharpness, confidence, and even a little bit of a threatening glare. Extremely weird eyes that could intimidate anyone. Well, I feel different. The voice of Issei also changed, now becoming more cold and sharp. He could feel how he could keep his emotions in check, no longer controlling him. A smile naturally formed on his face as he screamed in a childlike manner. "This is awesome. I sounded really cool." Although his voice still sounded different, now it had a warm feeling. It seems that the aura couldn't change Issei's personality completely. That scene made the Red Dragon Emperor gain a drop of sweat in the back end of his neck. However, he was glad that this change hadn't affected his partner that much. Issei started to play around with his aura because of its color and because he wanted to sound cool, he named it Darkness. Simple yet stylish, it completely suited his needs and tastes. Soon after, he looked at the reflection of his face in a small pool of what he wanted to believe was water. A weird mark was present on his forehead. He intently looked at his reflection, turning his head and looking at the other angles of the said mark. He seemed thoughtful. After seeing it more and more, he mentally sighed. The name he came up with was rather fitting but also hurtful, well, at least to himself. Demon Mark. That will be the name of this, I've decided. While giving up in his search for a better name, he talked loudly. Drake widened his eyes a bit, surprised by the name his partner decided. "Are you sure, partner?" the dragon asked his friend. "Yeah, Drake, it's for me to not forget what change was brought to me and made this mark and power appear." Issei decided as he explained his reasons to his friend, feeling sad even in the state of his mark. "Then how about the change in personality? What would you name that?" "I believe it deserves a name, after all, you really seem like a different person," Drake asked, his curiosity getting the best of him. Issei thought for a little while before an idea came to his head. "Demonic state, how about it? Simple and sticks with the theme." Issei asked back. "Good enough, I suppose," Drake commented. "Well, time to figure out what exactly my traits are, Issei said towards himself and the dragon while he started focusing on his darkness. When he decided to energize it and experiment with it, a terrible scream came from his throat, immediately scaring the dragon. A huge clash of aura became present and Issei was the epicenter. The vortex appeared right above his head and small violet-colored lightnings were inside it. Issei fell to his knees and suddenly felt his body heat up. His demonic state was forcefully removed and a scream of agony, because of the surge of horrible memories and emotions, was heard. Issei quickly bit his tongue, making the scream stop, yet the pain was still there. 8 black spots became visible in his body. They looked like gangrene yet also different. Each one of them was swirling at different speeds and also pulsing at the same time, giving him a repulsing look. The location of said spots was one in his biceps and thighs, making 4 of them just half of the total. The rest appeared in his chest, 2 of them at either side of his chest, and 1 at the union of his ribs, taking the shape of a disfigured, inverse triangle. Because of the difference in size they had, the last one appeared right below his belly button and was the smallest of the 8 of them, maybe the size of a coin. Issei, still on his knees, fought the urge to scream. The clash of auras his body was experimenting with was tearing him apart. Wounds became visible on his body, cuts, bruises, burns that came from the inside out, a few broken bones, and so many others were in his body. If the injuries kept increasing, then he would definitely die. But it seemed Lady Luck hadn't left him yet. His demon mark became present and at the same time the clash of auras started to diminish in violence. His darkness covered him little by little like a second skin, giving him a rather intimidating appearance. But being more precise, his darkness covered his wounds and at a speed perceivable with the naked eye, said wounds started to heal. Those types of wounds would have definitely sent him to a hospital to stay there for at least a couple of days, yet they were healed by his darkness in less than a few seconds. The pain from the clash of auras also disappeared, surprising him even further. He couldn't understand what happened. Worried, he asked his only hope, Drake, what exactly happened? Said dragon's answer was only silence. Issei was worried, maybe even Drake didn't know what exactly just happened to him. I have a theory. Quickly being interrupted by Drake, Issei was surprised, maybe Drake did know what happened to him. Well, I'm all ears. It's the evil pieces, after that day they were further corrupted. That violent clash of aura is proof of it. Drake immediately proposed his theory to his partner. Now it was Issei's turn to be silent. I believe that because the soul nature of your aura, which was healing, fought against the nature of the evil pieces that became destructive towards you. Its battle forced a clash between your powers. Those weird 8 spots in your body are the physical proof of the rejection your body has towards the pawn pieces, but because they are fused with you, they cannot be purged, because doing so would kill you. So the reaction occurred. Drake professionally explained, making Issei sigh in defeat. Truly his luck was the worst, gaining a phenomenal power only to be blocked by his evil pieces. The world truly hates him. Partner, I recommend you not to use your aura. If even trying to use your darkness caused a clash that was that violent, then using it more would make your body literally explode, recommended the dragon to his host. Truly the world hated them. Why was it so cruel? Stealing the last shred of hope his partner had such bullshit. Issei didn't have words to answer. It seemed life just became far much worse. Just when he saw a door open in front of him, it was shut tightly, slapping him right across his face. Just when he gained back a little ember of hope, it was extinguished without mercy by the cruel boot of life. The emotionless look he had before came back, but this time worse. Issei stood up from his sitting position and put his hands in his pockets, turned around, and left, not saying a single word. For the rest of the day he just laid on his bed feeling depressed, and even crying. But when night came, when he thought he would still be able to get maybe a little bit of rest, his nightmares started, not letting him rest in peace. As the days went by, the nightmares became worse, reaching the realms of night terrors. When that happened, Issei gave up sleeping. He just sat by his bed throughout the entire night until the sun was seen on the horizon, thinking about who knows what. Then he flashback and, finishing his memory, Issei reached a specific area of the training field. Oddly enough, it was the technique area. He thought that this was the place that would help him the most, not the power or magic area, but rather the almost plain looking technique area. He continued his walk in search of something, and finally, he found it. The console stood in front of him. It was located right at the beginning of the technique area. This console was used to personalize the obstacles one wanted, as well as setting the difficulty. The console was easy to use, and since he didn't want to personalize anything, he just adjusted the level of difficulty. Turning the knob clockwise, he set it to the max. If it was any other time, he would have never done that. If he was in the mood, around 5 or 6, that was the limit he could reach. But he completely ignored it. Today his instinct was telling him to max it out, and trying it at that level, so he listened to it. After the knob was turned, the terrain in front of him changed. A huge cage several dozen meters high was formed. It was black in color, and the only ornament it had was a single door for entrance and exit. He walked ahead with his head held high and reached the black metallic door. Opening the door, he went inside, yet at the insides of the cage laid nothing, completely empty, but he didn't let his guard down. Suddenly his instincts kicked in, screaming at him to move backwards. Taking heed, he quickly backpedaled, just in time for him to see a white blur fly by his former location. Holy power, Issei said, surprised that the training room had a machine that shoots holy power. He stared at his former position, only looking at the small but deep crater the attack left. Damn. Who was the crazy bastard that installed that in my house? His eyes went wide as he saw the smoking crater in front. Shit. That really packs a punch. That's the level of a high-class angel, perhaps more. Issei continued his monologue just in time for another white blur to come directly at his face. Shit. While throwing himself to the ground, Issei cursed. I swear once I find the crazy bastard that did this, I'll teach him a lesson. Issei kept cursing out loud at the one who made this training field. Soon after, 2 more shots came towards him, this time in opposite directions. Not knowing what to do, he jumped upwards, dodging both of the shots, but before he could celebrate, he was greeted with another shower of white blurs. At this time, he couldn't dodge. It was the sound of Issei falling from the sky. It seemed that the holy shots were more powerful than he expected. Standing up, his body was covered by a few scratches. Blood started to fall from the corner of his mouth. Well, that was pretty impressive. If I was still a devil, that attack alone would have left big damage even with my armor. Thank the dead god of the Bible that now I'm a full dragon and have resistance to these types of attacks. He didn't know what else to say. If his body was the impressive one, or the shots of holy power were the impressive ones. But his thoughts were gone as 6 holy shots came at him from different directions, reducing his dodging options drastically. Without wasting time, he activated his aura. Turning into his demonic state, his mark was proudly displaying itself on the left side of his forehead. Soon he saw how the shots were slowing down, giving him time to calculate the best way to avoid them. The shots closed in, but like it was a game, he moved at an incredible speed, leaving only an afterimage where he once stood. Surprised by the increase in perception and speed, Issei widened his eyes. Damn, that was cool. He screamed with a feral grin on his face. Well, let's see how much we can do. Issei said in a low voice as soon as he saw a couple more holy shots coming for his face. He dodged them all again, but because of the increase in number and speed this time, it cost him a bit more. He continued for around 30 minutes. Now the holy shots came by the dozens, and their shape changed to that of a spear for an increase in velocity. He continued dodging. No break was ever on sight, so his body was tired, extremely tired. Soon he made a misstep due to fatigue, and all holy shots came for him. No twisting or turning would make dodging possible. Be prepared for impact. Boom. A huge explosion was heard inside training field number 2. A huge cloud of dust was formed in the shape of a miniature mushroom. After the dust settled, a figure could be seen inside a crater. Both of his arms were crossed in the shape of an X. Scratches accompanied by blood were seen in both arms and legs. A few first-degree burns in his arms could be seen through the dust cloud. But for an impact of that magnitude, his body was barely wounded. Well, that hurt less than I thought. Issei broke his guard and scratched the back of his head. He thought that an attack of that level would have sent him flying and heavily wounded, at least on his base form. But reality was different. He was still firmly planted on the ground with something he could barely consider injuries on his arms and legs. Well, that was anticlimactic, he said in disappointment. Ah. Shrugging his shoulders, he released a tired sigh. After a few moments, his darkness acted up, fixating itself in both arms and legs. Before he even noticed, both of his arms and legs were healed and were good as before when he first entered the cage. The little pain he felt was gone, but it was replaced with a little bit of fatigue. Oh. Finally, noticing something else about his aura, he screamed. It seems that my darkness can heal pretty much any wound, but fatigue accumulates in its place. Well, whatever, it's way better than bleeding. Finishing the monologue, the dark brown-haired boy said. Now that's interesting. Let's move on towards another area. Issei said as he turned around and walked towards the black metallic door he used when he first came in. Quickly opening it, he went towards the console and made the entire cage disappear. The last thing he needed was for someone to notice he used the training field at max. He walked forward, his goal now was the magic field. If his darkness was capable of augmenting his speed, regeneration, reflexes, and flexibility that much, then what about his magic reserves? He looked like a child with a new toy, stars could be seen in his eyes. He always wanted to learn magic, but because of his pathetic magic reserves, he was never capable of learning it. Let's see if something changes. Excitedly, he walked towards the magic area, reaching it soon after. The magic area was a huge horizontal court that reached the wall behind it and the sides of the training field. Some parts of it were for range practice, while others evaluated the level of your magical reserves, others were focused on defensive training, and the last, but certainly not the least, was the offensive range, where one could see how much damage one's attacks actually did against enemies with varied magical resistance and defensive properties. Like in the technique area, he searched for the console. He quickly found it, and like in the past area, he maxed out the parameters, except the magic reserves. That one worked on a completely different system, well, at least that was what Azazel once told him. Reaching the defensive range, he activated it by increasing his aura. All fields occupied the same feature. If one wanted to start a specific range, one needs to be inside a specific location near the console of the said range and release a burst of their aura. The same applied for turning it off. One stood inside the specific location and fired another burst of their aura. Quite handy if you thought about it. Quickly increasing his aura, he activated the range. Soon the land turned dull gray with weird Norse runes that, according to Roswis, were resistance runes for the field to withstand its own attacks without destroying itself. Magic circles soon appeared over Issei's head. There were many of them, and they were of different magic styles. He could detect Norse, demonic, and angelic, the rest, because of his ignorance, wasn't able to. The magic was shot. Various elements soon blocked his vision, but because he hadn't removed his demonic state, he didn't feel threatened. Instinctively, he tried to manipulate his darkness to change shapes into that of a shield or something to cover himself with, but he wasn't able to. It seemed much more difficult than he thought. The only thing he could do was to cover 60% of his body in his darkness. A huge noise was heard, much more powerful than the one in the technique area. Even the entire training field quacked from the force of impact. Another cloud of dust quickly formed, reaching almost the top of the training field. Just by seeing the aftereffects of the explosion, one could tell how powerful it actually was. The figure jumped from the smoke, causing it to disperse. Then, with a loud noise, the figure landed on the ground, causing a small crater to appear. The figure was Issei and was barely injured. The parts of his body covered by his darkness were perfectly fine, but the parts that weren't were with medium-sized wounds. Nothing serious, maybe the wound only reached muscle deep, not bone depth. Even the burns he received were only first degree. His wounds soon disappeared as his darkness went by them, leaving him in his former state, but one could see a small bit of fatigue from the looks of his face. I underestimated the training field, again. With a sad voice and sunken shoulders, he said towards himself. Maybe he was reprimanding himself. Just why in the fuck would the max level be that strong? If I didn't have my darkness, I would be talking with my grandpa right now. Issei angrily retorted as he made his darkness only cover his shoulder and thigh, just like it was in the beginning. That attack in the past would have left me, in my armor, gravely wounded. Maybe only with a Welsh Dragonacroak would I have been able to withstand an attack of that magnitude and not be completely destroyed. That's definitely ultimate classes, or at least a high class that spent around 90% of his or her reserves on an attack. Issei analyzed the power of the attack. He figured something else from his aura, two things actually. Noticing his change, he stopped his thoughts. Wait. When have I been this smart? Putting his hand on his chin, he walked towards the specific location inside the range to deactivate the defense range. Could it be? While releasing a burst of his aura, he turned off the range. Opening his eyes wide, he realized something. My darkness is capable of increasing my own intelligence and deductive reasoning. Maybe even my memory. He discovered another trait of his darkness. That's strong. No wonder Drake said my own aura rivaled his. He felt enlightened. Now, the million-dollar question. Is this effect permanent, or will it go once I deactivate my aura? Well, there is only one way to find out. Deactivating his aura, he went back to his base state. Issei was thinking. Well, there is no concrete proof that the effect stayed. But how could I accurately prove that it's no longer here? Continuing his thoughts, he walked from one side to another. The best would be a test. But what kinds of questions will it have? My knowledge is low since I don't know much about the supernatural world, only the basic stuff. Maybe I could grab a former test from my school and repeat it. Continuing his mumbling, he tried to search for an answer, but soon after he realized something. Stopping his walk, he turned his head. A sour taste in his mouth. How would I actually propose so many answers in that short period of time if my intelligence didn't increase? Quickly finding out that he was doing something unnecessary, he face-palmed. It seems the effect is permanent, even if my darkness isn't active. Letting this matter rest, he looked back at the crater that was slowly repairing itself in the magic defense range. Another trait of my darkness seems to be increased defense. My guess is physical and magical. Good. With this, as long as I cover myself with my darkness, most damage taken could be reduced. Feeling happy about his discovery, he almost jumped due to his excitement. Now onto my next test, my magical reserves. Walking over to a separate range inside the magic area, Issei swallowed his spit. He was really nervous. In front of him stood a rather small obelisk, black in color. At the center of it, there was an imprint in the shape of a palm. The way the machine measured your reserves was simple. One injected his or her magical power, and by the series of different calculations, it could estimate how big your reserves were and give a specific result to be compared to. Of course, the obelisk had a limit with its predictions, and only by fighting would one accurately assess their reserves, but since he didn't have someone to fight with, nor the time to look for one, he took the easy approach. Issei placed his hand on the print and injected a normal amount of his magic power. Soon after, the obelisk shone in a white light contrasting with its appearance. The results were projected at the top of the obelisk. A hologram in big obvious words said the results. Yet the result wasn't what he expected. Silence was his only answer. He was surprised by the results. At the top of the obelisk, a few words were projected. Before, his magic reserves were among a low-tier, low-class devil, or around a high-tier, low-class mage. But now at the top of the obelisk the words were low-tier, high-class dragon, low-mid-tier, ultimate-class devil angel fallen angel, low-tier, master-class mage. His jaw hit the floor. Never would have he thought his magical reserve would reach that level. He was amazed. Although the test was done while he was in his demonic state, it still surprised him. Tears of happiness slowly poured down his eyes. It seemed that his reserves were dangling between low and mid-tier of an ultimate class. I cannot wait to tell you this, Drake. Wake up soon, buddy. I'll do my best. Meanwhile, while doing the former tests, he noticed how he couldn't activate the boosted gear. It seems that it will depend on Drake's awakening if he wanted to use the boosted gear ever again. He wasn't worried. Drake said it wouldn't take much time for him to awaken, so he wasn't the least bit worried. Issei decided to take the test again, but this time in his base form. Repeating the process, he looked more than surprised at the results. High-tier low-class dragon, low-tier high-class devil angel fallen angel, mid-high-tier high-class mage ... Unfucking believable, swearing in between his teeth, those were the only words he could think of. Wow. Still not believing what he saw, he decided to move to the next area, the power area. Reaching the big, square platform with the 4 pillars at its edges, he looked around. What the power area had was simple. It was divided into 2 ranges. First, all on out. The range with the best defensive formation, magic, and technology in the whole mansion. One could release their best attacks or practice their most destructive combos here, the place wouldn't even budge. The second range was matchmaking. Just like its title, you could fight different opponents inside here, ranging from normal humans to who knows what. Azazel specifically told him to not use the levels from 8 onwards because he will certainly die as he was now. Also, it was noticed that the damage sustained during matchmaking was real. Holograms were created, but their physical form and attacks were fueled by magic power, making them take actual form. For that to happen, the range counted with several magical generators, the top of the actual generation. It absorbed the energy of whatever was close by, increased it at an enormous pace, and then transferred to the hologram. Similar to his boosted gear, but it didn't double it, and it also had an upper limit before the machines exploded. Cross that limit and they will go boom. Well, matchmaking is a no. The past 2 were bad enough, and without a good repertoire of attacks, it would be suicide even for me. Issei calmly said as he ignored matchmaking. Then he went towards all-on out, activating it like the former 2. He set the barrier to the max, since he didn't know how destructive or offense-related his darkness was. Seeing the barrier form in the shape of many different crystals conjoined one against the other, he was once again amazed by the supernatural world. It truly was something else. He patiently waited until the barrier was fully formed. It took a couple of seconds, less than a minute. Well, let's experiment a little. Issei activated his darkness, encasing himself in it, then he did a few punches and kicks, but the result wasn't what he expected. Boom. 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 Every time he sent a punch or kick which was covered by his darkness, a boom occurred. He was reminded of Saraerd causing sonic booms with his punches and kicks, now he could do the same. Wow. My strength increases by a couple of times when any of my limbs are encased with darkness. Maybe this way I can fight against Saraerd toe-to-toe without the boosted gear. Maybe even defeat him when he uses his longiness. Well, that's a 30/70th. Issei made a conjecture which was close to reality. He was happy, his aura just became better and better. However, he could only fight like that when his body or limbs were encased by his darkness. Without it, and only with his demon mark active, it would be a tough fight between both of them, assuming Saraerd didn't use his longiness. He continued his punching and kicking routine to accustom himself to the increase in strength. More than an hour passed, and he was finally able to control more of his strength. He also discovered that by the degree of coverage his darkness had towards his body, his general offense and defense could increase or decrease. Well, it's good that my close range abilities increase this much. But what about an enemy that I cannot touch? I need some ranged attacks. Issei thought as he stopped his training. Looking intently at his darkness, he decided to manipulate it to change it into other offensive forms, those that were off of his body. Focusing, he manipulated his darkness into the shape he was the closest to, a sphere. He rapidly concentrated a big amount of his darkness into a ball maybe the size of a tennis ball. Good, we're making progress. Issei then extended his palm, shooting his ball towards the barrier. He never expected that the barrier would pose no defensive ability at all, and his ball would just make a hole right through it. The ball continued its flight across the power range. He followed it with his eyes and saw it crash on the earth. Yet no explosion was heard. He walked out of the barrier and approached the zone of impact. What he saw was a perfect circular crater 6 meters in diameter. The ground was gone as if it wasn't there in the first place. What the fuck? Issei eloquently said. Soon he decided to create another ball of darkness, this time much smaller, the size of a pebble. He threw it, and when it touched the ground it expanded into a dome 2 meters in diameter. It made everything inside it be burned. He couldn't see any flames, but the heat the crater irradiated was really high, alongside the small columns of smoke here and there. It seems that this attack is just really compressed flames that vaporize pretty much anything inside its diameter because of their absurd heat. Issei said as a theory appeared inside his head. This thought filled his eyes with surprise and even a little bit of fear. It's similar but very different to the power of destruction. Since they are flames, they are different in essence, and to reach that level of strength they need to be compressed into a sphere, he continues to mumble. That was a normal reinforced floor from the power area, so I can say their output of power is pretty good, but I cannot expect them to vaporize everything. Issei concluded, flames suited a dragon like him. Maybe I can change its shape. Well, that would be left for another time. I'm beat, and using my darkness for healing is quite tiring. What should its name be? I mean, they are flames, and come from my darkness. Thinking over something meaningless, he took his time until he decided to name his flames. How about Hellblaze? Yes, I like it. Issei was satisfied and decided to leave the training floor. Scene change. Issei's room. Issei opened the door to his bedroom. The ridiculously big room was laid before his eyes just like when he left. Seeing it made him sigh in relief. It seems that no one noticed his absence. That was good for him. Walking closer to his bed, he noticed how he was only wearing a pair of mangled pants. He wanted to take a shower, so he started to take off his pants, but he felt something inside his pocket. Putting his left hand inside, he took out what was in his pocket. Shock filled his face. Shit. Looking at the object in his hand, Issei swears once again. How could I have forgotten about this? In his hand now laid a bright red chess piece with black spots. To be more precise, one of his pawn pieces. The evil pieces. They were inside my pockets. As he grabbed the piece, he felt how it started to absorb his energy. Noticing this, he hurriedly ran towards his desk at the far left from where his bed was. He quickly laid the piece there, and as fast as lightning he took the remaining pieces off of his pockets and lined them up. In front of him were 8 red pieces with black spots. Cracks adorned their surface, and a little bit of dry blood could still be seen on them. How can I hide them? While not taking his eyes off of the pieces, he asked himself. Soon he thought about something. He now had an idea of how to solve the problem. If I'm not wrong, there should be an empty wooden box inside my dresser. Just the perfect size for these pieces. Issei went to his dresser and searched for the box. He had to turn the dresser inside out since the box seemed to be pretty well hidden. Finally, the wooden box was in his hands. With the box in hands, he went back towards his desk. He grabbed the pieces and put them inside the box. Damn. Even inside the box, that horrible aura still manifests itself. Maybe if I learn magic I could seal it off. Issei figured it out. But where could I learn magic or other things? There's no one in the mansion, and there are no books. Finding his answer inside his comment, he face-palmed once again. The goddamned library. The boy roared. He lifted his head upwards and closed his eyes as a sign of realizing how dumb he was. Sighing in defeat, he walked out the door in search of the mysterious library. Well, where is the library? Realizing he didn't know where it was, he walked downwards, reaching the front entrance. Well, let's start searching. Right at the entrance of his house, he started his search for the mysterious library. 40 minutes later. Who in the world puts a library on the 5th floor of a mansion? Once again insulting the architect of his house out loud, he closed the door behind him. In front of him there was an extremely big library, several meters in height. One could see a 2nd floor, and at the far left, almost at the corner of the weirdly big room, stairs in the shape of a spiral could be seen. They were rather small, only one person at a time could go up or down. Boo. Vocalizing his awe, Ice walked and turned his whole body around. Never knew something this awesome was inside my house. How is it even possible for it to be this big? Ice was surprised. He never knew he had a library. He only heard about it from the girls a long time ago. Well, time to search for some books. But what kind? What is the most I lack right now? While walking around his library, he started to think. Common knowledge. Ice was right, he needed as much common knowledge of the supernatural as he could. Deciding what books to read, he went back to the start. He saw a section of myths back at the beginning. Aha. While pointing at the section of myths like a detective, he said. Found you. And walked closer. He noticed many different legends from various different mythologies, from Sumerians to Celts to Japanese to Norse, among others. There was even an especially big part about Christianity. The entire section occupied a whole bunch of bookcases. Just all of this knowledge occupied one of the walls of the library, and some books were even on the 2nd floor. Let's start in a chronological order. I have the entire weekend to learn as much as possible before school. Walking right at the beginning, he found a subsection that read, Sumerians. Picking the first book, he read the title. Enuma Elish. He said as he read the title of the book. He didn't know what this was about, so he started to read. When on high the heaven had not been named, firm ground below had not been called by name, naught, but primordial Issei, their begetter, Tiamat, she who bore them all, their waters commingling as a single body, no reed hut had been matted, no marshland had appeared. But no gods whatever had been brought into being, uncalled by name, their destinies undetermined, then it was that the gods were formed within them. Reading inside his head, he noticed this was a poem of the creation of the world and the birth of the gods. Tiamat? Like the Tiamat that hates drag. Shit. How is she even alive then? Or maybe a fragment of her former self survived and healed her back up. Who knows, maybe another mystery of the world. Issei said, dismissing the idea of Tiamat. That will only bring a headache. A couple of minutes later. So that's how the world was formed and created according to them. He closed the book and put it back into place. He looked at the clock firmly hammered against the wall, around 2 p.m. He arrived here late in the morning, after all the tests, and reading only a book, not much time had passed. It seems that I need to step up my game. I hope that by Friday I reach the Christians. Although reading all of those books in the huge wall is a big challenge, I believe I can more or less do it. While believing in himself, Issei picked up another book. The title read, The Epic of Gilgamesh. Surprised by the title, he quickly sat down at his former place and started to read. I will proclaim to the world the deeds of Gilgamesh. This was the man to whom all things were known, this was the king who knew the countries of the world. He was wise, he saw mysteries, and knew secret things, he brought us a tale of the days before the flood. He went on a long journey, was weary, worn out with labor, returning he rested, he engraved on a stone the whole story. Issei kept reading the epic poem of Gilgamesh, he was amazed by what he read. So he was the first hero. And the prototype for all of them? Like the book says, the king of all heroes. That's super cool. I wonder how strong he actually was. Issei seemed surprised by the newly acquired knowledge. Many hours went by, and soon, night arrived. Issei was still in his spot reading another book. He finally went to another folklore aside from the Sumerians. Reaching the Egyptians and reading many of their myths, teachings, laments, dialogues, prophecies, etc. Some of the books were titled Litany of Ra, Amjuad, the Eloquent Peasant, etc. Wait. So Apophis was Egyptian, and not only that but the greatest enemy of Ra. Issei was once again surprised by the new discovery. I actually killed a being of legend rivaling Ra, the sun god of Egyptian mythology. Not believing what he read the book once again, but the words were still there. I'm awesome. It seems his shamelessness grew by quite a bit. Complimenting himself like that, he took a page off of Azazel's book. Too bad I can no longer access the dragon drive, but I'm sure I have become stronger, and in the future I'll be even more. Issei was satisfied with his deed and didn't let this setback affect him. He soon continued his reading. After a while he stopped reading only myths. Other texts were also read by him, but because of the sole quantity of the texts, he needed to stay awake all night for him to read them all. But since he liked the texts, he was satisfied with staying awake the whole night. The next day quickly arrived and Issei was still inside the library. Getting up he closed the book he was reading, one of the most famous books in history. The Odyssey, by Homer. A fantastical tale about Odysseus and his 10-year journey to reach Ithaca, and after many years and obstacles he managed to get back home. He just finished reading it, feeling a lot more respect for Greek culture. He was also very surprised with himself, after all, he had met the three greatest gods of the same pantheon. Stretching himself because of the sleepless night he heard all of his spine crack. Oh. That hit the spot. Issei said as he cracked his back feeling refreshed. Time to eat something. After that I should train more with my darkness, I still do not know enough about it. Issei said as he went towards the exit of the library. Walking down the stairs he soon reached the first floor. Walking tiredly to the kitchen he saw some people he never expected to see, mentally he said. Fucking shit. Just my luck. Sitting on the table there were two women he would rather not meet. Scene change inside the kitchen of the Haidu mansion. Riaz and Akeno were sitting in the kitchen, eating their breakfast. Something odd, after all, for the past month they were always gone, even for breakfast. This intrigued him, but soon after he dismissed the thought, it's not like they will speak to him now of all times, right? This was merely a coincidence, nothing more, nothing less. Issei convinced himself. Reaching the refrigerator door. He walked past them, secretly releasing a breath he was holding, it seemed his theory was right. He grabbed random pieces of fruit and the orange juice box. Since he was training later he wanted a light breakfast to not throw up. He quickly seated on the same table as the two, who were just talking among themselves. Grabbing a plate he chopped the fruit to a suitable size. He filled a glass with orange juice, and just when he was about to eat, his expectations were thrown out the window. Oh, Issei. Didn't see you there. Ria said as he looked at our dark brown-haired boy. Quickly noticing the change of his hair she asked. What happened to your hair? It's longer and darker. She quickly asked, making Issei flinch. As fast as he could, he thought of an excuse. Oh. Good morning Riaz. About that, I let my hair grow a little longer. About the color, since I had nothing better to do I dyed it a tone darker. Issei said with a goofy grin, scratching the back of his head to avoid suspicion. Please believe it. Please believe it. Please believe it. He chanted inside his head while keeping a calm demeanor. Riaz and Akeno were surprised by the new discovery of the actual Sekiruyute, but since they didn't detect a lie they let it slide. After all, the Issei they knew weren't good at lying. So that's why. You look good. Akeno complimented me while giving him a smile. But he was no longer the same, so he just said. Thanks with a rather emotionless voice. This shocked her slightly, but she let it slide. Issei would never reply like that, right? Where have you been, Issei? We've been looking for you. Riaz commented with slight worry on her tone. This took Issei off guard. Looking for me? Ha! He scoffed inside his head. You can piss on my back, but don't tell me it's raining. Such an obvious lie, do they think I am that dumb? Although the look in your eyes is a good touch, quite convincing. What do you mean Riaz? I have been training and in school. Where else could I've been? Surprised by how good he put that one out, Issei said in a slightly joking tone. Both Rias and Akeno were suspicious, but they knew he was right. Where could he go? Maybe they just didn't match at the moments they were looking for him. Yes, you're right. Sorry for doubting you. Rias replied while apologizing. If it was the former Issei he would have bought it, but not anymore. Issei started to eat his breakfast at a rather fast pace. What he wanted was to get the hell out of here. But once again, Rias spoke, making him curse inside his head. Fucking shit. Can't a man eat in peace? I mean, you won't bother a dog while he is eating. So why are you bothering me? I want to tell you something, it's about a rating game. This blow almost made Yus choke on his fruit. Rating game? Against who? There's still a while before you enter the world of the pros. Issei was finding an excuse for himself. The last thing he needed was a fucking game right now. Oh, about that. My brother told me that they are proposing a world-class rating game so that anyone across the world can participate in it. Rias casually dropped the nuke. For the first time in a while Issei was surprised. He went wide-eyed, his jaw hitting the floor. This scene made both women giggle. The world-class rating game? His mind was spinning. Quickly many ideas came to his head, but first he needed information. Let's take this chance to squeeze her dry of information. With a malicious smile Issei thought. Then he asked, what do you mean? The more open the question the better it was for him. Though Issei thinking he didn't understand, Rias released a tired sigh. It means that anyone can participate. It doesn't matter what they are, even gods are allowed to participate. Of course, being of that level they are limited in numbers. The information my brother gave me isn't much. After all, it is still a project in its early stages, they haven't put it into action yet, so not even a name was proposed. Rias told all the information Issei needed. Although it was scarce, it was sufficient. It seems that I need to advance my plans. Something of this magnitude just popped out of nowhere. Ha 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 ha. The timing is perfect. Issei had a plan. Since he was no longer part of her peerage, he wanted to explore the world and see it with his own eyes. That was the reason for him to train and learn that much. After he became a full dragon his desires also grew. His search for adventure was the biggest one, followed by becoming stronger and fighting someone worthy. Now that the idea of such a game was proposed, he could accomplish a little dream he had. Being the leader of a strong team. However, for that he needed candidates, something he currently lacked by a lot. He wanted someone strong, fitting to be by his side. Now that he left that horrible attitude from the past his pride shot up by a huge margin. Therefore, he wanted people he could trust and be strong by themselves. Well, I was going to leave sooner or later, better sooner. Issei was lost in his thoughts, so he couldn't listen to the voice of Rias. Issei, are you listening to me? She screamed next to his ear. This made Yus wince in pain. Sorry, I was surprised by that news. He quickly apologized, truthfully. Nah. HMPH. Adorably pouting her face she told Issei once again. You will be participating as a member of my team. After all, we have fought together since the start. So it's better that way. Rias ordered her pawn. Issei was taken by surprise, so he said something as a reflex. But I would like to fight on my own. Something he quickly regretted. The looks on both the women's faces was priceless, as if the whole world was flipped upside down. He almost laughed out loud. Why would you want that? Issei, we've been through thick and thin, why would you want that? Would you abandon my peerage and fight against us? Damn that acting. Not even an Oscar winner would be worthy of carrying her shoes. Issei was surprised by the hypocrisy behind those words. Even Akeno spoke up. Yes, Issei-kun. Why would you fight against us? We are family, please don't think like that. We need to fight together. Damn. Another excellent actress. Shit. No wonder they fooled me so perfectly before. It seems way too real. Even now I can't detect any hidden intentions. Issei's thoughts were comparing them to famous actors he knew about. Maybe all devils were good actors. Yeah, you're right. I don't know what got into my head, sorry. Of course, I will fight with you. He answered with a trust me look on his face, making both of them smile beautifully. Trying to change the conversation he spoke mindlessly. How has college been? He needed to make time, he almost finished his fruit, just a couple more pieces. The smile in both Akeno and Rias was gone, instead it was replaced by a sour look. Well, good enough. Our senpai hasn't been with us recently, so we are worried about our duties as the future president and vice president of the faculty. Rias said in a low voice, surprising Issei a bit. He, as quickly as he could, finished his food. Standing up he placed his plates on the sink and washed them extremely fast. Oh. It seems there are problems in paradise. Laughing inside his head Issei walked past them, but not before telling them. Is that so? Don't worry, I believe everything will be fixed soon. with a fake smile. Now if you excuse me, I need to train. If we are going to fight against the god classes, then I need to become stronger. Issei said to both of them, not really lying. Goodbye. Issei said his goodbyes. But unknown to them, these would be the last words they will hear from Issei in a long time. Scene change. Training field number 2. Issei waited for both of them to leave the house. As soon as they did, he went to the training field. Right now he needed to think about his plan since time was against him. He didn't know when the confirmation of the world-class rating game would be made. But he didn't want to take his chances. Before it started, he needed to absolutely control his darkness and figure out more about it. Now standing in the power field, he went again to all on out. He wanted to try if he could change the form of his hell blaze, so he experimented on it for a long while. He discovered that imagination was really important to change the form of his darkness, so he tried really hard. After a while he was capable of creating a hell blaze in the actual form of a flame. He was extremely satisfied since was capable of changing the form of his darkness. After that, he dismissed his flames and went towards the magic field. Fuck yeah. I was capable of changing their form. But how much damage can they do? That's the real question. Issei had a feral grin on his face. He went to the console of the offensive range, setting it at the maximum. He wanted to see how powerful his hell blaze was against real targets. Many holograms of different species appeared, many of which were devils, angels, and fallen. Others were Imkai or Norse warriors. But each and every single one of them were using their own abilities oriented towards defense. Rotating, defensive magic circles with many different weird symbols appeared in front of the races of the 3 biblical factions. Smaller, compressed circles with Norse runes appeared on the magic warriors of Valhalla, while the close combat warriors of the Norse just prepared their bodies by covering themselves with magically augmented shields or weapons. Aki covered the Imkai while others used Onmum spells. He could identify those because of the many animes and mangas he had seen and read, so the papers gave their specialty rather easily. All of the warriors were of at least high class and power, with a few outstanding ones among them. Some of the warriors were even of ultimate class. Issei once again was surprised. He really wanted to beat the hell out of the one that made the training field. Of course, something as broken as this appears when the parameters are maxed. Why did I expect something else? Issei was tired of all the surprises the training field was giving him. Well, let's see how much damage I can do. Preparing his flames by literally grabbing them, he threw them at a space in front of him. The black and purple flames flew through the skies, and soon they reached a couple of angels and devils. He was surprised, the flames completely ignored their magic defense and hit them head-on. Screams were heard from the holograms. Everything was extremely realistic, so he could see the damage he just did. Some of the other races at their sides tried to help them extinguish the flames, but it wasn't possible. Shocked at the result of his flames, he watched how the flames were not capable of being extinguished. Now that's something even I would not want to be hit with. With a surprised and scared face, Issei quickly said. He then ordered the flames to extinguish themselves. They quickly started to decrease in size and vanished from his sight. The image in front of him was quite bad. Angels and devils were covered in 4th-degree burns as they slowly disappeared in particles of white light. After preparing himself for another round, he turned his eyes to his next target. He then threw his flames, this time towards a couple of ultimate class. Their shields resisted, and only a couple of them were actually hurt. Nothing serious, 1st degree maybe 2nd degree burns tops. It seems that my flames completely disregard creatures that have less magic reserves than I. Deducing what just happened, I thought of something. Against those that are similar or above in magic reserves than me, it would be a battle of attrition between their defense and my flames. I need to create something that completely nullifies their defenses. Issei thought of a plan once again. Better increase the firepower of my attacks. He opted for the second one, since he lacked offensive power. With his darkness's regeneration and healing, as well as his natural resistance, he could withstand many hits. I need something that is similar to my sphere of darkness. Something that literally annihilates and vaporizes at the same time. Thinking to himself, Issei spoke with a loud voice. What is fast, aerodynamic, small, and can actually fly? Issei needed to think about something. Sphere? No. Too obvious and not fast enough. Spear? Too much of a cliché. An animal? Yes. A dragon? No. Too complex, it would take time to make it. Continuing with his ideas, he reached the conclusion that he was not reaching anywhere. He sat down on the floor and looked at the sky, thinking. Hoping anything will come to his head. A bird. Opening his eyes wide, he stood up, of course. A fucking bird. Reaching his former position, he coated himself in his darkness. He decided to make a sphere. He made it big, around the size of a basketball. Soon the sphere started to deform, it was changing form, but no bird was seen. Fuck. Even a bird, it's too complicated, come on. I only wanted to fly properly and be aerodynamic. Issei was trying really hard. Sweat could be seen all over his body flowing down like a waterfall. Maybe if I make it even more simple, I only want wings, a tiny head, and a tail, that's it. Ice was exhausting himself, but soon enough the ball started to deform and two really simple looking wings sprouted on its sides. Issei was extremely happy, he gathered his remaining energy to try and finish this off. Another sphere appeared on top of the ball of darkness, connecting itself to the bigger sphere. After that, a small peak in the shape of a triangle adorned its little head. With a boost of energy he felt through his body, because of his success, a tail in the shape of a reverse triangle appeared, he completed the bird. Done. Issei screamed, surprised by how much effort it took. He fell to his knees and breathed heavily, sweat still pouring down his face. The bird didn't move, it just floated there minding its own business, one could see an orange-red substance inside it. What he did was to compress his flames to the limit in the shape and size of a soccer ball. Then he coated the ball in his normal darkness and changed his darkness to fit the shape of a bird. He could see the horrible power and heat this bird released, even if he was 2 meters away from it. Standing up, he came closer to the bird. He placed his hand on top of its head and screamed, "Purgatory Flame Bird." The bird flew extremely fast towards its designated target, that being a small group of ultimate classes. They were surprised by the bird flying right at them, soon it reached a speed barely perceivable with their eyes. But by some miracle, since the bird was flying in a straight line, they were able to dodge it. Issei had a mocking smile on his face. Did you really think I spent the last hour making a bird that only flies in a straight line? Think again. The bird moved its tiny head right at them, and with extreme flexibility and speed, the bird turned left. It flew even faster than before, easily breaking the sound barrier. Caught off guard, they were hit by the birds. A small explosion was heard, even though it was small, it was extremely loud. A sphere with heat that surpassed everything he that was at a distance ever felt appeared, and the ultimate class became less than ash. Not having any words, not even profanities to say, Issei just stood there. His attack eliminated a group of 5 ultimate classes and pretty decent ones added. They were above average and by quite a bit. Damn, that attack power. Those poor bastards became less than ash. What would have happened if I used a boosted gear and boost the bird? Inhaling a breath of cold air to calm himself down, Ice regained his calm. Thanks to his successful creation, Issei stayed more time there, hoping to improve even more than he already had. After a couple of hours, Issei was capable of creating multiple spheres of darkness the same size as the first one he ever shot. He could even shoot many at the same time and control their trajectory. He even managed to create a big sphere the size of a human being and control it to change direction. Of course, he could only do simple turning, he still couldn't make them twist and move like his hand or foot just like Surzich's did, but he will reach that level one day. Scene change. Library. Haidu Mansion. Issei finished his magical training as well as his physical one. He needed to get back into shape, and thanks to his dragon physique alongside his aura, it wouldn't be too complicated. Issei was now reading about the Persians. But he was only interested in their Zoroastrianism, so he only read their principal text, Avesta. Reading through it, he quickly found the name of an evil dragon, one that he knew much too well, Issei Dahaka. He was described as a monster with 3 mouths, 6 eyes, and 3 heads, cunning, strong, and demonic. Rather fitting if you ask him. It narrated that he was defeated by a guy named Faradin, and since he couldn't be killed because of all the chaos it would cause, he was chained inside Mount Damvand. How Rizavim and the rest found him was a mystery. According to what he knew, Mountain Damvand was lost in the river of time since the death of their religion. Just how are these guys capable of finding someone like this? Issei didn't know. The only extinct civilization in which some remains have been found was the lost continent of Mu, and even of them only bits and pieces remained. If my memory isn't wrong, didn't Vali mention he looked for them once? He really didn't care, so he continued his reading. Since Zoroastrianism was extinct, he only learned a couple of things, not really interested in anything more than the basics. He passed the Romans since they were the same as the Greeks, at least in gods, but with different names. He only cared about the Roman civilization, but that material was far too big and would delay his plans, so he skipped the majority of it. He only read about the first emperors of Rome, and only that was really dense material. Celtic mythology, he soon reached a mythology that interested him. Actually, not much of them is known, since they were rather isolated. After the 3 biblical factions stole their believers, they became isolated from the rest of the world. Well, that's what Azazel said. He researched more about that culture since Gaspar had Baylor inside him, so he was rather curious. According to the books he read, not much was known about the Celts, since many of their records were destroyed by the Christians who came to their territories. Only a few legends were still remembered. Like the Fomorians and the Tuatha De Danann, who were described in the Book of the Battle of Mag Turid. Those records were saved thanks to the Christians, since they adapted the legends to fit their beliefs, changing every being into humans, whether kings or heroes, so as to make the inhabitants of those lands less angry at them. So the Fomorians were a race that came from the sea and represented evil in general, while the Tuatha De Danann were the deities that fought against them. Issei summarized a lot of Celtic culture in that sentence. Their leader is Dagda, their chief, and the god of life. Issei explained to himself so that he could retain the information better. The Morrigan was a tripartite god that was divided into 3 different goddesses that governed different things. But they are still considered a single existence. Issei continued his summary. La, god of light, is the strongest with his magic spear. He was the one who slew Balor, king of the Fomorians. He had a son titled Cuchulainn. Known as the most famous and most unlucky hero in Celtic history, his true name was Setanta and was called the Shield of Ulster, and the Child of Light. He took all of this information to memory. Why did nobody ever tell me this, or at least tell me to investigate it? Issei was angry, so much information that could have helped him. He sighed in defeat once again. He didn't know why he never tried to learn something like this. Turning around, he looked at the wall. Damn. Already that late. Issei looked at the clock on the wall, 11 p.m, rather late. Since tomorrow he had school, he couldn't pull an all-nighter, too much of a pity. He stood up from his chair, closed a book, put it back into place, and left. He went down the stairs, reaching the floor his room was on, and opened the door to his own room. Like always, nothing was there. He looked around until his eyes stopped at a wooden box on his desk. Maybe I should put it in another place, he had no idea. Nah. Over there doesn't bother anyone. He quickly gave up the idea and went towards his bed. Putting his sleepwear on, he laid down on his bed. Looking at the ceiling. He was thinking about many things. His plans, the world-class raiding game, Drake. Releasing a tired sigh, he turned around and tried to go to sleep. Worrying will not solve anything, and Drake will come back. He was sure, he just needed time. A maniacally laugh came from his mouth, but he hurriedly covered his mouth. He wouldn't want someone to wake up now, would he? Well, let's see what tomorrow will have for me. Issei said as he went to sleep. Thanks for watching this video. Part 3 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the playlist that I have created and enjoy. Link is in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.